ESPN presents Major League Baseball Magazine. This week's cover story, the distance between Babe Ruth and Roger Repose as the crow flies.
I was in 23 World Series. That's more than any player.
We'll visit a baseball card punster with a collection unlike any other.
Right now, there's about 3,600 cards, all one of a kind.
And we'll get to the root of the latest trends in baseball fashion.
You have to see Les's hair. That's the worst haircut I've ever seen.
This is Warner Fussell for Major League Baseball Magazine. From 1932 until 1968, Frank Crosetti either played for the Yankees or coached them, giving him an honor no one can touch.
I was in 23 World Series. That's more than any player. And Yogi, I think, had 21. He was right behind me. He said he was going to catch me one day, but he's retired now, so he's out of luck.
Crossetti's string began in 1932 as a teammate of the Babe, the year that Ruth called his legendary shot. But the Crow knows better.
He called the Cub players a bunch of cheapskates and a bunch of scrounges and all that stuff. So naturally, the Cub players, they started razzing Babe when we started playing. So that's when that all happened. Say about that. Do you want me to tell you whether Babe pointed or not? In my opinion, Babe did not point. I think Koenig said the same thing. What Babe did, he had 2 strikes on him real quick. And he pointed up one finger. In fact, he was facing the Cub dugout, or they went like one finger, meaning I have one more strike left. And he did not point to center field. He pointed to the Cub dugout. The next day, I believe, of course, everybody, all the writers, of course, they want to make a big story out of it, that the Babe pointed to center field. So the Babe next day said, if the writers want to think that I pointed to center field, let them. I don't care. Now, that's what I remember him saying that. So he did not point to center field. But everybody wants to still make a big story of it that he pointed, but he didn't.
The 1938 series provided Frank with a moment to remember as he took Dizzy Dean downtown.
I believe that day the wind was, well, it was blowing in, and probably when I hit that home run, maybe the wind might have stopped blowing or something, and maybe the ball was a little lower. But that day I hit 4 balls right on the snoot, really hit them hard. The other one was a line drive that Demery caught in left field, and the other 2 were hit just as hard as the home run. But evidently, the ball may have gone just a little higher, and the wind might have been blowing a little bit and brought them back. Now, if that wind wasn't blowing that day, I could have had 3 home runs. You can imagine that, a 250 hitter having 3 home runs? That would have been something, wouldn't it?
Not all of Frank's memories are happy ones, however, for he was there in 1939 for the final game of Lou Gehrig.
You know, in spring training, during that year, you could see that he wasn't moving good. And when he'd hit the ball, well, it had no power behind it. And nobody was, oh, well, it's early, he'll get going, you know, he'll get going, but he never did. So, but nobody realized would have dreamt of anything like that. You know, that's how are you going to think of something like that? But I remember, I believe it was in Detroit when he took himself out because Babe Dahl went to play first base that day, and it was like a morgue. The dugout was really a sad thing.
As a teammate of Joe DiMaggio in '41, Crosetti had a dugout view of his 56-game hitting streak.
Well, we were all keyed up, that's for sure, you know. In those days, you didn't dare hit 3-0, you know, 3 balls and no strikes. But I remember, would Joe get 3 balls and no strikes on it, McCarthy would let him hit. And that, to try to keep the record going, you know. So I'll never forget, we were going back in the train, and I remember I heard DiMaggio went in to thank McCarthy for letting him hit 3-0. He said, thanks, Joe. Oh, no, I said, that's okay.
It was also in '41 that Ted Williams hit .406 for Boston, despite the shifty efforts of the Yankees.
Coleman, I think, would go out way out in right field. And the shortstop moved over back a second, and the third baseman almost played shortstop. But Ted would never take advantage of trying to hit the ball the opposite field. He may have once or twice, but he still would get base hits anyway.
Playing with DiMaggio and against Ted gave Crosetti a unique perspective on their talents.
Well, Ted, they say he wasn't a good outfield, but I didn't see nothing wrong with his outfield playing. He played all right with me, and he could run good, and he could hit, certainly could hit. Of course, Joe was a better all-around player. He made the tough plays look easy. So graceful, you know, and you wonder how he caught that ball, but there was nothing to it, no effort, really.
After retiring in '48, Crosetti stayed on with the Yankees as their third base coach, and one opponent quickly caught his attention.
Kaline, good outfielder of Detroit. He threw out 2 runners at home plate in the same inning on me. And they were bang, bang, both of them. That son of a buck, he was accurate, boy. I'm telling you, right, if the ball had been this far off, they would have been safe. So see, you got to be lucky. So you got to gamble. Of course, you got to figure in the outs and the score of the game and the outfielder's arm and all that stuff. But he was deadly. I'll never forget that. He threw out 2 runners in the same inning. I'll never forget that.
The Crow was notorious for not shaking hands with players when they hit home runs, but there were a few exceptions.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to pat them on the back. They didn't care. You know, they didn't. I just clapped my hands, say, nice going, nice hitting or something, come back. Well, I did, when Mantle hit his 500, I think I shook his hand then, and when Maris hit the 61, I think I hit him in the back or shook his hand. That's about all. There's only 2, I think, I ever shook their hand.
One time we got together and said, Crow, one time. We can understand when a guy hits like Mickey hits over 50 and Roger hits 61. We can understand, you know, they hit a lot of them. But one time, when you just shake our hand or give us a pat on the back when we were around third base, he said, nope, do something important. So all we got from Crow was, had a way to go, Bobby, had a way to go, Clayton, had a way to go, Tony, and we just went by him until, of course, Roger's famous home run and Mickey's 500th, where he all but followed Roger right down the third base line and jumped on his back and everything else. And that was a very emotional experience for Crow. And it always surprised me because Crow wasn't an emotional man. I mean, he had to have his wits about him at all times at third base to make a lot of tough decisions. But he got so emotionally involved in Roger's 61st home run. It was so great to see.
With 37 years as a player and coach, 80-year-old Frank Crosetti is a treasure trove of great baseball memories.
You look at what his tenure in the Yankees transcends, from the Ruth Call shot, he was on the bench, through Lou Gehrig, 2,000-plus consecutive games, through DiMaggio, one of the greatest players of all time, through Maris and Mantle, and some great Yankee teams. He was part of all that. And it was not coincidental that these Yankee teams were great, and that's why I say the first thing comes to mind, Frankie Crosetti, a great Yankee, and I think a Hall of Famer, very honestly.
Very fortunate that I had my health and I didn't get hurt. Because if I'd have got hurt along the line and I didn't want to go to school, I wasn't educated, and if I had to go back and go to work, what would I have done? I'd have probably been digging ditches or something, digging cemeteries. So lucky that God gave me some ability to play baseball, and then I never got hurt. I was very fortunate that way.
In the news, players who've come out of their shells with a new look for the 91 season.
That looks like something out of a horror movie, but have no fear, it's just Larry Anderson.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
No.
Sunflower seeds on Mark Twain's face. Hello there.
Somebody taped up his eye. Some of the guys sit on a bench with nothing to do but goof around.
One thing about getting a stand-up double and running the bases is you have to see Les's hair. That's the worst haircut I've ever seen. That's a bad haircut right there.
Notice the way he wears his socks and his sanitaries and his stirrups. You don't see many pitchers looking like that.
Ugly, too. Look at that.
Now, his hair looks okay there. If you had a good shot of it with his hat off, that was not a cute haircut.
That's his second hit this year. He's now 2 for 4.
I thought you were going to say that was his second haircut this year.
No, that's got to be his first and only haircut of the year.
There it is right there. Now, look, it's a crew cut on top, and then the locks
hanging down below, yeah.
But players aren't the only ones whose style is just a bit off color.
Hard to believe they're umpires in baseball uniforms with Cincinnati jackets. But they are.
Should be the men dressed in blue, but the uniforms didn't make it.
Nice hat, eh?
Yeah, they're good for fishing or going out on the boat, sailing or playing golf. They really are nice hats.
But if we can make one thing perfectly clear, it's that the real trendsetters are the fans in the stands.
It's a nice mask. Give him an A for originality.
Where are we? Gotta be New York. Excuse me, sir, did the nose come with the glasses?
You know, it's amazing what Fran Healy will do after he gets off.
I guess those hats are not, they don't form-fit the head.
I hope not.
Sneak a high-rise under that thing. A couple of airheads right there, huh?
It's an old saying, you can lead folks to fashion, but it's important that they know where to stand where.
Wow. You want to see how you look? Look right there. You look gorgeous. I love those colors on you. The Budweiser girl. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now.
Hey, what a pleasant and beautiful surprise this is.
Paul Kerman is a New York City artist who's never met a baseball card he hasn't defaced, making him baseball's #1 art punster.
I had a roommate who was also from Pittsburgh, and we went out and bought some baseball cards to try to get a few Pirates, and we got about 2 Pirates and maybe 200 other cards. And they just were lying around until another friend and I started drawing on them one night. And it was a lot of fun, and we started drawing on more, and the rest is history.
Paul's only limitations are the names of the players and his Lucy in the Sky imagination.
Most of the cards are purely decorative, even just like drawing a mustache on them. But there are some player names like Darryl Strawberry, Chet Lemon, Todd Burns, all these names that lend themselves to literal interpretations. I call them literal cards. A lot of people call them pun cards. And basically what I do is I erase away parts of the cards and add things to them. Like I'll erase Darryl Strawberry's face and replace it with a strawberry.
Adaptations can take minutes or hours, and some are sweeter than others.
The card I'm most proud of is Rick Honeycutt, and I sort of made a big gash in his face, and there's a honeycomb underneath with a bee swarming around his face.
Paul's art is the punk rock of baseball cards, and though he often works alone, he sometimes throws a party.
At the first party, there were 8 of us, and we did about 70 or 80 cards. And everyone had a great time, so we had another one, that was in April, so we had another one in July around the All-Star break. And there was about 8 people at that, and we did about 90. And then the next one, there were about 15 people. And so far, we've had 12, and they've gradually gotten more and more people come to them. And the last one, there were 250 people.
Forget about Max Ernst and Salvador Dali. With more than 3,000 adaptations, the king of baseball anti-art is Kerman.
Personally, I look towards a more surrealistic aspect of it. Like, I view my baseball card collection as this strange Dada surrealist collection, and I love it.
And now, once again, Sue Essler and Bill Crabe in their quest to visit every major and minor league park in the country.
Stadium number 43 on Sports Tour is Jack Russell Memorial Stadium in Clearwater, Florida. Correct me if I don't get the story right, but a few years back you played Three Blind Mice or something like that on...
June the 26th, 1985, right here in this seat. The umpires missed one about a mile, and so I played Three Blind Mice, and about that time the home base umpire come up here and busted the fence down there. Went like that, you're out of here. So I got thrown out.
So, have you ever played it since then?
Not when the umpires are on the field.
This is stadium number 45 in Orlando, Florida. Tinker Field, the home of the Orlando Sunrays. Certainly one of the strangest backdrops we've seen on Sports Tour so far is Florida Citrus Bowl. It sits most of center field and right field here.
On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go.
Massive balloon contest going on in Orlando. This is Municipal Stadium in Pompano Beach, Florida.
Yeah, good job.
Here's the Miracle Butler.
Check out the umpire there, too.
Yeah, get the umpire under there.
That's the umpire.
That's the Butler from the Dirt Devil.
There goes the dog. It's not exactly a St. Bernard. It's rather kind of a cute golden retriever. Brings out Griggs to the umpires here.
There's Bill getting a long-needed haircut. Of course, there's no time to get a haircut on Sports Tour, though. So, of course, he gets it done at the ballpark. They have it all here in Miami. Even a cellular phone. Apparently the phone's not working though because it keeps getting robbed.
It's all over from Pompano Beach, and we're off to our next stop with a new haircut.
And now it's time for the Upper Deck Stat of the Week. Nobody does baseball like Upper Deck.
Our Stat of the Week celebrates the consistency of greatness that is Wade Boggs.
You got it. Wade Boggs with his 200th hit for the 6th consecutive season. The first man to do it in modern baseball history.
Boggs has himself a base hit. He is 2 for 2.
Boggs gets his third hit. He is 3 for 3. It's to left field, and it's going to be in there for extra bases against the wall. Boggs has a double. 1,800 career hit for Wade Boggs.
Is there a hitter today who can match the output of Wade Boggs? Well, not one you'd think of.
They must be letting anybody broadcast now because, ladies and gentlemen, all three of us are broadcasters. I mean, we really do work. I mean, so you know it can't be that hard if these two guys are doing it, and me too.
You never know whom you'll find in the broadcast booth, but it's a pretty safe bet they used to be players, and sometimes they get a little wacky.
I was doing color that whole inning. Did we say anything about anybody was up?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, that's right. You asked me what happened. I said killing flood.
Yeah, that's it. I was trying to give you a hint, you know.
Dykstra ground ball to third. Ouch. Bit my tongue, Wheels. Really bit it. That hurts.
Can we do the open again? I have my pants unzipped.
Welcome back to the new Comiskey Park. I'm trying to share the booth with Tony Kubek. I'm really not able to get a good shot in here. Tony's very possessive about things when the red light is on.
Look on my television.
Jocks in the box quite often voice their opinions.
It's a good indication here of how slowly a man can walk when he is going to the mound.
I wonder if they eat seeds in the offseason. They go home and spit them on the carpet.
You like those high-top shoes?
Well, I never wore them, so I really don't know how comfortable they would be, but
They're not too stylish unless you go back into the 1800s.
How about these guys? Is this a big umpire's crew? I'd like to run into these guys in a dark alley.
Harris smashed a water cooler. What he should have done was work on his head. That water cooler didn't do anything. It was that head that made the mistake. You got to think in this game.
we'll send him a copy of Rusty's Rules of the Game.
And sometimes they can get a little testy.
High 2-1. You have a good lefty on your rotisserie team, Tony?
If you try to explain to me what rotisserie baseball is, I couldn't even come close to understanding it.
But you're so knowledgeable about such a wide variety of topics. How could something so close to baseball elude your knowledge?
Close to the eggheads of baseball, like you.
The eggheads of baseball.
The pseudo-sophisticates. The intelligentsia of the game, which I do not consider myself among.
Do you know how many people you've insulted? An egghead?
That was... Do you know the tinge of sarcasm?
Yes, it's frequently found coming from your lips, but that was viciously placed, I must say. I'm hurt. I'm hurt.
Subway people, not the rotisserie people.
I'm so angry that when this happening's over, I'm out of here. I'm leaving.
Promises.
On deck for next week, Ethan Allen, inventor of the All-Star Baseball Game.
I've had terrific response from people who played the game. I had a very nice letter from Bill Madden of the New York Daily News, and he wrote me that he had bought the game and played it as a kid.
This is Warner Fussell.
Promotional considerations furnished by United